Hi, I'm Anita Burrows, and I am the state representative for Jackson, Bartlett, and Harts location. I'm in my second term, and I currently serve on the Commerce Committee, having served for the first 2 years on the Judiciary Committee. And I'm here to talk to you today about assessing your competition in your race for the New Hampshire House. Why do you want to do this, and when do you want to do it? For one thing, you need to know as much as you can about your opponent. You need to know what their views are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses. You want to do that even before you file for office, because you want to know if this person is beatable. There are frankly some people in the legislature or in the state Senate who I don't think are beatable. There's a gentleman that I work with, David Muse. He's a representative in Portsmouth. Nobody ran against him last time. That was the good news. They felt that he was unbeatable. He's a great rep. There is Senator Jeb Bradley, who's a Republican. I don't think Jeb is beatable unless it was a really extraordinary person, because he is so popular. So that's the reason you want to start this now, and you don't want to wait till you file. And you want to do this so that you can have a coherent strategy for winning. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about assessing your competition in the race for your New Hampshire House. And why do we want to do this? We want to know as much as we can about our opponent so we can put together a strategy that's going to be a winning one. And now I ran for the first time in 2018. This is my second term. I ran against an incumbent who had been there for 37 years. He was the Speaker of the House. So there was a wealth of information that I had, which was an advantage to me, because I was able to see this gentleman's voting record over 37 years, his demeanor, what he said as a speaker, and all kinds of information in the press, interviews, etc. Now, not everyone's going to have that advantage. Some of you are going to be running against people who've never run before, who are in a shorter time. There are always ways to get information about your opponent. Now, why do we want to do this? Now, for example, my opponent had some strong feelings about certain issues that I thought were not winning issues for him in our community. He was somebody who voted for conversion therapy. We have a large gay community here. That was something that I thought was going to be very concerning to people. He had flipped his stance on abortion rights. I think that, again, that was a big issue for women up here, and not a great environmentalist. So having that history enables you to formulate a strategy and what issues you want to focus on that you think are going to be to your benefit in your community. And you know what the hot buttons are in your community. Down in Portsmouth, for example, PFAS, chemical contamination, is a huge issue. Up in the North Country, where I live in the White Mountains, not so much. So that's an important thing. And you're the one who's going to have to learn and figure out what the hot buttons are where you live. Now, running against an incumbent, as I said, is in some ways easier and obviously in some ways harder. If you have somebody who's been in, as in my case, for 37 years, that person is well entrenched. They may be beloved, but every person has their weaknesses. And I decided to challenge this individual because I knew that people in the community were ready for a change. I knew that. I talked to people, and some people said, "Why do you think you can win?" But I knew that enough people were ready for a change that I felt I could do it. And I also believed that the demographics in my community had changed enough that a Democrat could win, even though they had never won in 37 years. And I turned out to be right about the demographics. A lot of young families were moving in with children, and that made a big difference. Now, just about everything you need to know is online. Some things won't be, but a lot of information is there, whether you're looking at an incumbent or somebody else in the community. Everybody has had information that's been written about them. If it's an incumbent, there are going to be news stories, there are going to be information on social media, there's going to be recordings of interviews. But even if you're running against somebody who's never been in office, if they're a business person, if they're a nonprofit leader, whatever they are, there's going to be some information you can gather online. And you start off by simply Googling them. And if you can't find that information online, you're going to have to start looking at other sources like your constituents and people that you know. One of the great things about running against an incumbent is that voting records are all online for everyone to see. There's nothing secret there. And I'm going to tell you some of these websites are a great place to find out about voting records and some other information. And you should go to all of them because all of them have different information. Ballotopia, VoteSmart, Citizens Count. And two others are Legiscan and Granite State Progress. Granite State Progress, by the way, has a very detailed website on each candidate. I went to see mine and I was shocked at the level of detail that they had about me, and it was all very accurate. Now, you can also look up roll call votes by the number of the bill or by subject, which is a wonderful thing to do. And here's the website. It's the General Court for the state of New Hampshire. It's pretty intuitive how to do it. Go to the House of Representative link and go down, and it'll let you do a search. Again, if you happen to know the name of the bill, you can do it by bill number, or you can put in a subject. And if you're having trouble finding if you feel you need the bill number, do a Google search. Like if it's an abortion bill, put in abortion bill, New Hampshire, and you'll see some bills come up and you'll be able to figure out which one you'd like more information about. Now, one great thing about the hearings in 2021 were that unfortunately, because of COVID-19, our committee hearings were all online. That is not going to be happening going forward, unfortunately. It was a great way for the public to get a handle on what was going on in the community, and we had more participation than we've ever had before. So you can go to the House of Representatives, New Hampshire House of Representatives site on YouTube and go there and say, I'm on the Commerce Committee. If you wanted to see a hearing where I was, you could click on them and you could hear the hearings. And these are valuable. It's actually valuable for two reasons. You can find out what the different committees do, get a sense of where you might want to sit if you are elected. And you can also hear your competitor. What have they been saying? Are they articulate? What are their weaknesses? Are they saying things that you feel are disturbing and that would be disturbing to your constituents? You need to take note of those. Those are really good things to bring to people's attention. It's all public knowledge. You're not doing anything that you shouldn't be doing. That is important information. And a great example of this was yesterday on the news. There was a hearing of a budget committee where a representative, I won't say him by name, even though it was all over the news, said some really inaccurate things about the COVID vaccine. So that would, and he was stopped by the Commissioner of the Health and Human Services and said, please stop handing out this misinformation. So that would be an incredible piece of information for you to have and to utilize. Again, it was all over the news. The hearing was public. You're not doing anything that you shouldn't be doing. In fact, you should be making the public aware of something like that. Now, you can talk to your constituents and see if the person is not in office, see what they know about them. Are they a nonprofit leader? People knew me, for example. I had been chair of two prominent nonprofits in my area. So a lot of people knew me. So I was a community leader. So talk to people, see what do you think about this person? Do you think this is a good candidate? Do you have any information that you think would be useful? Of course, you're not going to be that blunt with people that you don't know very well, but just talk to them. Say, hey, what do you think about Joe? You think he's a good candidate? Do you have concerns? Do you think he'd be the best person? And talk to the incumbent's colleagues in the House. Ask them for information about the person you're running against. And if you don't know people in the House, ask some people in our party to introduce you. When I was running against the incumbent who had been there for 37 years, I got a lot of information from colleagues, actually from both sides of the aisle, who told me a lot about this person. And it was very, very helpful to me. Now, there are other sources of information for all candidates, so don't despair if you're not running against an incumbent. There are other ways to get information that you can utilize in your campaign. A lot of people, particularly people running for office, are obviously engaged, and they may have written letters to the editor. These are great. Find out what their views are, what they're saying. Are they articulate? These people also may have been going to town meetings, to school board meetings, and some of them are recorded on Zoom that you can watch them and start going to these meetings to find out what they're saying. If these are people who are up and talking, like right now, we have a lot of people going to school board meetings who are concerned about vaccinations and masking. So you can find out what are they saying. Social media is another great source. Virtually everybody has social media accounts on Facebook, some on Instagram and Twitter. Go on them, scour them, do a great job of going through and find out what they're saying. Because some once in a while, you may go through a lot of posts and you'll come up with a jewel that somebody has posted that you want to keep in your back pocket, or you want to use in your campaign. And everybody makes mistakes and writes stupid things sometimes. I've done it myself. So you really want to scour that. And by the way, you want to go through your own social media accounts and make sure before you run that things aren't up there that might be potentially embarrassing to you. I am somebody who has an edgy sense of humor. There were things that I posted that I thought might not go over real well as a candidate. I took them all down. I didn't think that there was anything wrong with them, but I knew they might rub people the wrong way. So I took them down. News articles, again, no matter whether it's an incumbent or somebody who's never run before, if they are a public figure, there will be news articles. And once you are the candidate and you're in the game for the end, virtually every candidate has a website where you can go in. Most of them post about what their feelings are about different issues. Go through it and really learn about what they're saying and what they think. One really great source of information is the campaign finance reports that are posted by the state of New Hampshire. These are reports that we as candidates, and you will be required to post on a regular basis. And what these finance reports tell you is how much money is your opponent raising? Who's giving them money? Are they taking money from PACs? Are they taking money from organizations that you think are questionable? But you really want to know where they are in the process of raising money. My opponent, for example, I knew had raised $44,000, which is an insane amount of money to raise for a House campaign. The average race should cost around $3,000. So I knew that I was not going to beat him based on money. I raised about $15,000, which was also crazy, but I felt I needed to do that in order to be competitive. But so knowing that information, I knew that I had to differentiate myself, and I did it by canvassing. I went to 500 houses. My opponent, in for 37 years, never knocked on a door. And that was the reason. I believe that is the key reason that I won. You also want to monitor what the opposition is saying about you. And believe me, they will be talking about you. If you Google yourself during a campaign, you will be shocked at some of the things that are put up by Republican websites and their social media sites. So you want to go through them. Some of them may be the things that they say may be accurate. Some of them are not. They tend to put up the most unflattering picture they can about you. But make sure you know what they're saying so that you can refute it. You also want to get onto some right-leaning newspapers in New Hampshire, find out what they're saying, not only about you, but about the issues, because you need to know where the arguments are that you'll be able to position yourself in your campaign. Get onto their e-newsletters. How do you do that? You don't want to put your name down. I'll tell you my secret. I used my mother's maiden name, and I was on the newsletter, and I found out when they were raising money, what they were saying. Sometimes I was mentioned in it. So it's very good intelligence. And I think it's a good thing for your town and county committees to be doing as well, to know what's going on. So you also want to engage your opponent in civil discourse. And how do you want to do that? Now, I was invited in 2020, I was invited by my opponent to come to a rally that he was having for himself for a debate. And I thought about it, and I thought, no, I do not want to go to a rally that's going to be full of Republicans who are going to hoot and holler and possibly say disparaging things with the media there. You only want to do this when you have a neutral moderator or somebody reasonably neutral who can control the audience and make sure that it's a fair fight. So make sure that if you do it, it is in that kind of setting. And what kinds of things are there? Now, some places you can put together public forums. Right now, the Democrats in my community, we're starting early. We're going to be doing public forums on Zoom. And initially, we were going to start out with just Democrats. And when we get towards both Democrats and Republicans, the League of Women Voters will be doing events. Go to them. Very important. Your cable TV stations are dying for stories. They're looking for programs to do. And most of them will do a story interviewing you or doing a debate on TV. I've done a number of those. I did one with my opponent again in 2020. We had a really great debate. It was very civil. The press was talking about it the next day, not in terms of how many punches were landed, but how civil it was. And it was a great experience to do that. And unfortunately, it doesn't always go that way in these races. You want to do newspaper interviews. Sometimes they give you the questions ahead of time. Prepare. Make sure you are prepared. And social media. You can engage with your opponent on social media, and that is another great way to engage. I hope that you've learned something today about the importance of gathering intelligence about your opponent. Without having this information, you are not going to be able to put together a coherent campaign that talks to the voters in your community about the issues that they care about most. So I hope this is helpful and that you'll be able to utilize this information to your advantage to win in 2022.